Welcome back to Energy Now. About half of our electricity comes from burning coal. It's a process that also causes more than a third of all the carbon emissions that most scientists blame for global warming. So the U.S., as well as governments all around the world, we're now counting on one single strategy to slash those emissions, a process called carbon capture and storage, or CCS. But much of CCS is still experimental right now, and a new study from Duke University says this could be risky as well, that choosing the wrong geologic storage sites could contaminate drinking water. Joining me now for the mix to discuss the state of CCS, where it is and where it needs to be, as well as the risks involved. First off, Sarah Forbes with the World Resources Institute, also Gary Spitznogle with American Electric Power. And in just a moment, we'll be joined as well by someone living right next door to this CCS plant in West Virginia. But before we hear from our mixed panelists, let's look at exactly what CCS is and exactly how this process works. It involves a series of technologies to pull the carbon dioxide out of the emissions from burning coal and then either recycle that CO2 or store it deep underground in rock formations. Now, the Department of Energy has partnered with researchers and businesses to find ways to perfect the CCS process, and the DOE has tests going on right now at all these locations across the country. Tests to find out which geologies are best suited for deep carbon storage. Also, there's lab research on innovative ways to extract the carbon. All right, Gary, let's start with you. As you've said, AEP burns more coal than anyone else in the Western Hemisphere. You have to have this technology going forward.
That's right. We burn a lot of coal. It constitutes about 2/3 of our energy production. So if we're going to continue to use the resources we've invested in and have been using, we have to come up with some solution that makes it compatible with climate legislation.
All right, Sarah, where do you put it all? Recently, Atlantic City rejected a plan to store this stuff offshore, 70 miles offshore. So who says yes? Who's going to take this stuff on?
It's really important that communities like Atlantic City, that the city government is involved and make decisions like they did this week to say no. But there are communities that we're seeing that are coming forward and saying, yes, we'd like to host a CCS project. And I think the decision is very local, very dependent on that local community, and also very individual to the proposed project.
Let's talk about one of the reasons why communities would say no. That is some of the risks of carbon capture and storage, specifically the issue of water contamination. And Energy Now asked the Department of Energy about that brand new study we mentioned from Duke University.
Well, we have a whole program looking at the underground aspects of that, and even with using computer modeling, we can help with simulate how the CO2 will behave underground. Safety issues, I'm not that concerned about, but of course we are continuing our research from the smaller scales to the very large scales in different types of geology to look at those issues that we have to be mindful of.
All right, Sarah, it's a fair question. How worried are you about the health risks of CCS?
I'm worried that we're not going to get the rules right. We developed a set of guidelines in 2008 that really outline how you responsibly deploy CCS. I think that every country, every jurisdiction that's looking at CCS projects needs to make sure that they have the appropriate environmental health and safety regulatory framework in place.
Yeah, Tyler, I couldn't agree with her more on that. Not only do the rules have to be right, but we have to understand how to deploy this. It can't be done anywhere. I mean, I guess the bottom line is you can't do this technology just in any location. You have to pick the locations very specifically. The rules have to be appropriate for those locations, and we have to do it right. So I agree totally with what Sarah says.
And on that note, Gary, I want to go to a community that has said yes to this project, and that is New Haven, West Virginia. Joining us now from there is William James, who lives less than a mile from AEP's Mountaineer CCS plant. In fact, William, I can see it right over your shoulder there. What is life like with that kind of plant right in your backyard?
Well, it's just like anywhere else, any plant you go to. It's just how the people are running it. You know what's going on. There's no surprises. We know what goes on with the carbon capture, and we're well informed.
Well, you're in a community too, William, that is tied so closely to coal. It's responsible for jobs, for infrastructure there. Let's face it, if CCS doesn't work, your town, and maybe to a large extent the state of West Virginia, could be in real trouble here.
That is correct. But like I said, AEP has been very good at being upfront, showing us all the safeguards, and have always been here for us to point out the problems and how they were taking care of them. So you couldn't ask for a better neighbor.
Well, what about what's going on in your community right now? And heck, William, even in your backyard, No problems with the water, no problems with the air. You have friends, you said, that are monitoring some of these situations right now.
That's correct. The city water people here watch this water very closely, and I have great faith in them. They know their job, and they're not afraid to pull the plug if something's wrong. And they do their job well.
All right, William, I want to turn now to the other coast of the country right now. And a viewer question for our guests here in the mix. This comes from Robert Steinhaus. He is in Castro Valley, California. He submitted his question to us through Facebook. His question now, why is not replacing coal with clean, scalable forms of energy, especially nuclear power, a better investment of resources than CCS? And Gary, I want to start with you because CCS, you've said, could raise the cost of electricity for users by 80%.
It's a big number. I mean, when people hear a number like that, it really makes you step back and say, wow, is there another way?
Well, it makes you say, wow, but it also hurts when you're trying to pay that electricity bill every month.
It sure does. And as you look at the analysis, and we depend a lot on EPRI, Electric Power Research Institute, to do those kind of studies so that we have a better understanding of those numbers. And they show portfolios that include CCS on coal and portfolios that eliminate coal from the mix and what that does. And although maybe 80% is the outlook of CCS with coal, 250% is the outlook of replacing those resources we have now with non-coal resources.
Are people going to pay for this, Sarah? I mean, bottom line, electricity is cheap, and if they can't see the pollution or don't feel like they're dealing with it, they're going to have an uproar over paying higher prices.
Yeah. So I have a question, are people going to pay for climate change? I think that the viewer question about clean energy technologies is very well pointed. What I'd like to say is climate change problem is so big, CCS alone isn't enough. We also need massive deployments of renewable. We need to be doing energy efficiency activities. We need everything. And I'm concerned. I'm concerned that we can't meet our goals.
Well, what about the technology specifically, CCS, Sarah? And right now, AEP is capturing roughly 90% of the carbon emissions. Is that enough? 10% is still getting out in the atmosphere and still potentially causing problems.
So if there was no CCS on that plant, 100% would be going out.
So it's better than nothing.
The 90% is, to my understanding, is the best you can do with engineering. That last 10%, getting it increases the cost exorbitantly and just isn't worth it.
Yeah, cost is an issue, Gary, but so is commercial viability, actually making this thing work. Alstom Power, Duke Energy, they both told us here at Energy Now that right around 2015 is when they see this coming available, at least the carbon capture portion. Is that realistic?
Well, it depends on what you're saying is available. We believe that our deployment, a commercial scale deployment, probably maybe the first in the world, will be online in 2015. So 2015 will be that time you see the first commercial systems online and running. Does that mean it's commercially available, that you can get manufacturer warranties and guarantees so that then we can put it on our plants and still reliably produce electricity? I'd say 2015, and the answer to that is no.
Is that soon enough? Is the green community, Sarah, going to say yes, that's soon enough to get it done?
So I think tomorrow isn't soon enough when it comes to climate change. I do understand that one of the concerns that I have about CCS is that we need to do these first of a kind plants and do due diligence and ensure that they have strong research and development components.
All right, I want to thank our mixed guests, Sarah Forbes, Gary Spitznogle, and also William James joining us from New Haven, West Virginia. Once again, thanks all for being with us today.